What is going on, guys? Halfway through the best ball regular season, I figured it's time to start reviewing our teams, diving into what should we feel good about? What do we feel good about? Maybe what we think might change the rest of the way. What teams are buried, right? So we'll just get down right into it, to the nuts and bolts. Let's just have some fun. Every Tuesday at this time moving forward, we'll talk about some things that have happened. I got a couple that we'll kick off with. And if you have any teams you want to share, make sure you go into the Discord, spikeweek.com/Discord. Anyway, there's a link in the description to the Discord. Hop in there, drop a team into one of the draft feedback channels. I have the Discord up here, so I can always pull that team up. We can talk through, if you have questions about how you constructed that team, if you just want to gloat because you have an awesome team, or you want to share a absolutely terrible team, really anything. This is the space where we can talk through, right? We just got the results, the final results in last night of all the games, but obviously yesterday we had some of them, and kind of seeing what changes on a week-to-week basis. It's a ton. We were talking again in the Discord. Make sure you're in there. We have a free best ball, totally just fantasy sports Discord. Some people are talking DFS. We're talking battle royales. There's pick'em slips. Obviously, tons of best ball talk. But we were talking earlier today, and it was a really good point someone brought up that we can kind of kick off the conversation with, that's a little bit more macro, where somebody was saying Josh Jacobs, right? Josh Jacobs that's got to be the highest advance rate player. We kicked him all the way down to the 8th round or whatever sometimes. And let me actually pull up his I actually don't know what his final ADP was on Underdog. Here's my lineups, which we can walk through here in a second. But you have Josh Jacobs, who just went before this past week, where he scored five total fantasy points. Before this past week, Josh Jacobs was seemingly the biggest smash in fantasy, right? I think I listened to some content. I think some people even said that. Oh, Josh Jacobs is now the best pick in all of fantasy. And I think it's reasonable to expect that, but we should talk through those kinds of things, right? And that's what this forum is going to be for every single week, is to say, okay, yes, Josh Jacobs has smashed. What does that mean? What does that mean for my Josh Jacobs teams? What does that mean for my non-Josh Jacobs teams? And then when you really start to dig into it with him, let me find him on here real quick. So he finished with a closing ADP on Underdog of 82. It's funny, you see, I have him ranked 103rd overall, which shows you why I have 2% Josh Jacobs in Best Ball Mania 3 going really well. But when we take a step back, where it's really easy to be a prisoner of the moment, and hopefully we won't do that here on this show all the time, but it's really easy to be a prisoner of the moment and say, man, that dude just crushed, especially when you do it for 3 weeks like Josh Jacobs did. Josh Jacobs was the RB. So here's essentially what happened, and I can kind of pull this up while I'm talking it through. Josh Jacobs really didn't do anything for 3 weeks. For the first 3 weeks of the year, he never scored more than, didn't even get to 10 fantasy points in a game, but the usage did start to improve. And so that's where we saw, if you play DFS or whatever, that's where we definitely started to see this potentially coming. Maybe not quite to this, not quite to this level, but we started to see Josh Jacobs emerge. And you're like, oh, baby. And then the 3 monster games happen, right? Let me change it to half-point PPR. And we go to Josh Jacobs. So he's sitting as the RB6 right now in fantasy. And if we go look at his game logs, and again, go to half-point PPR. So this is why these are the kinds of things I think are super fascinating to go over, because like I said, when Josh Jacobs goes nuts for, and I guess I was incorrect. I must have had it on standard. But so 7.8 points for Josh Jacobs in week 1. No one cares. 8.6 points in week 2, Josh Jacobs. No one cares. 12.2. Okay, fine. Like, usable for sure. Then, boom, 32, 27.8, 35. Goes nuts. Right back down to 6 last week. And he just had such an insane run where he is, as you see, the weekly RB1 overall, RB3 overall, RB1 overall. But in those other weeks, he really didn't even particularly help you. Like, he didn't kill you, of course. He wasn't the reason you lost. He wasn't Kyle Pitts or Kenny Galladay or Najee Harris. But he was just fine. But then we get so caught up in those few weeks where Najee crushes. I can't even believe I said that out loud. That will never happen. I don't think it's physically possible for Najee to crush this year. Where Josh Jacobs crushes, and you're like, man, he is the best. He was the best pick. He's the best fantasy pick. He's going to have the highest advance rates. He's going to, he's going to provide such an edge, whatever. And he has been very helpful. Of course, I do think people that drafted Josh Jacobs are certainly not upset. I wouldn't be upset. I'm not upset about the 3 teams that I have for Josh Jacobs. Clearly, Najee is on my mind. Not the clip of Najee dancing around out in the flat on that Kenny Pickett check down on, was it 4th and 1 or whatever, was so long. He was dancing around out there for so long. It's still stuck in my mind because I watched him, such a long clip of him be terrible at football. But like, these kinds of things I think are super fascinating to talk through and then also project forward, right? So you're definitely not mad that you have Josh Jacobs, but I'm a little worried about the Raiders. little bit worried about the Raiders. If anybody watched that game, I mean, they didn't score. The Saints had been giving up, I believe it was somewhere along the near the lead in the entire NFL in points. The Raiders did not reach midfield until mid to late 4th quarter. Didn't reach midfield. Now, they had clearly been moving the ball for most of this year. That's why Josh Jacobs had 1 million yards and a bunch of touchdowns in 3 straight weeks. But this is a team with 2 wins. They do get some winnable games here coming up, right? Jacksonville, Indy, Denver, Seattle. But I just start to worry about some of these teams that are frankly not very good. Look what the Colts are doing. Look what the Lions are doing, selling off assets. I think other teams are going to start to do this. I think we're going to kind of see buyers and sellers, and not even necessarily like with trades or whatever. Hopefully we get some more trades today, but not necessarily with trades, but with like, the Lions may just shut DeAndre Swift down. After a few weeks, we were very much not mad about having DeAndre Swift on teams, right? Let me go back and we can look at him as another example of kind of just a quick and dirty find Swift here. Swift scoring 15 points per game. Swift scoring 15 points per game. He's really not even like that far off of some of the best backs. Certainly not like in the Eckler territory. But half point PPR, right? If we were doing this show on the Tuesday of week 3, we'd be like, damn, Swift was a good pick. He wasn't even getting the ball a ton. Dude barely touched the ball in week 2, scored 15.7 half PPR points. Had 15 carries for 144 yards in week 1 against the Eagles, who are one of the best defenses in the NFL. You would be wheels up, right? But this best ball season is a freaking roller coaster. Early in the year, remember Derrick Henry and Austin Eckler, frankly, both looked not great. Eckler was not getting the ball at the goal line. Eckler was sharing a lot of snaps. The Chargers defense looked much better this year. And we started to see maybe this Eckler at 5th overall, 6th overall was not a very good pick. Boom, defense starts to get hurt. Keenan gets hurt. Mike Williams gets hurt. Josh Kelly gets hurt. And the Chargers are not winning games, or, they're winning some games, but they're not dominating games. And what happens? Last year's Austin Eckler comes right back. Derrick Henry gets a couple of good matchups. 30 carries a week, smashes. And so Christian McCaffrey traded, smashes. And so it's a fun thought experiment, like week to week, because last week at this time, everybody would have said, oh my God, Josh Jacobs. And I was probably thinking it. I probably would have came on here and said, well, guys, I got 2% Josh Jacobs. I got 2% Josh Jacobs. I'm probably dead and buried. 2% Josh Jacobs, 1% Austin Eckler. And after last week, very little Ken Walker. It would be a tough scene for me. But then Eckler goes on by, so that's a little bit lucky. But like you say, I've won in best. We'll just use Best Ball Mania as an example, because I don't want to cross over to pull in super flex and backyard best ball and different stuff to screw up the exposures. But like you would have had Breece Hall 2 weeks ago, and whatever, Josh Jacobs, and you would be riding high. Now Breece Hall is hurt, and Josh Jacobs has a horrible game in what seemed like an awesome matchup, right? And so racking and stacking all of these things, I wanted to start this because we'll look back, right? We're going to get to week 17. We'll do this show and we'll review the semifinals. And we'll look back, like at this first episode, like maybe Josh Jacobs is just a smash, but maybe he's useless come that time. And it'll be fascinating to kind of see have like a little bit of documentation on, okay, how did these teams stand, in week 7, week 8, week 9 versus in once we actually got to the end of the season. Let me share a team that Silas just posted in the Discord. I don't know if there's, oh no. Okay. Silas says, my second highest scoring team lost both Javonte and Breece. And your third highest scoring team is a robust RB team with both Chubb and Hunt, which is this one. Yeah. Okay. This one. Let me zoom in a little bit here. Jalen Hurts, so 1,070 points, obviously sitting in first place. Gee, good Lord, scored 168 points this week. Jalen Hurts, Ryan Tannehill, Austin Eckler. Oh, my Lord. Look at those running backs. Austin Eckler, Alvin Kamara, Nick Chubb, Kareem Hunt, and Jamal Williams. Absolute stone cold smash, particularly if anybody's watching this down the road. We're recording this on trade deadline day. So if Hunt gets moved, oh baby. DJ Moore, who is apparently just a total renaissance, is undergoing a renaissance with PJ Walker. There you go, Andrew, trying to zoom in a little bit better. DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen, Robert Wood. Good Lord, dude, did you draft a wide receiver under the age of 25? DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, Tyler Boyd, Mecole Hardman, Alec Pierce, James Washington, and Tyquan Thornton. Is James Washington coming back? Can someone remind me? Is he coming back at some point? And then Dallas Goedert, and I'm trying to scroll down. Sorry, the zoom in Discord is a little bit obnoxious. There we go. Dallas Goedert and Tyler Higbee. My God, this team is a stone cold smash. So the Hurts to Goddard stack, Tannehill to Robert Woods stack with DJ Moore, Chris Godwin, other than James Washington, completely healthy at wide receiver. And I think you're totally fine with an unhealthy James Washington. Tyquan coming on strong. Alec Pierce, I think, is in a good spot to be useful for you down the stretch. Mecole with the one monster game and another usable week or two. Tyler Boyd in an awesome spot now without Jamar Chase soaking up some more targets. Pretty fun. This team is awesome. This team is insane. So, like, I'll be interested to see, like I said, in a couple months, we come back and we're like, man, like, think about this team right now. You couldn't even use all these running backs. Isn't that crazy? The problem with the robust running back team. I guess you used all three. I'm thinking about last week, but you get the Kamara monster game. You get another awesome Chubb game. You get another good Jamal Williams game. Last week you get the huge Eckler game. I mean, the running back room is absolutely loaded. I'll be fascinated to see what the receiving room ends up doing. Because there's definitely enough pieces. You just got to mix and match some scores, right? Obviously, DJ Moore's cooking. Chris Godwin kind of comes in with like a baked-in floor. It's not what you were hoping for when you drafted Chris Godwin, but I think the baked-in floor for him is nice with the amount of targets that he's getting, assuming the Bucs don't collapse, which they shouldn't, being as though the Falcons are in first place in the division, which is just disturbing. So I'm going to pull up as well. Feel free to drop any teams, anything you're looking for kind of feedback or whatever on into draft feedback. Doesn't have to be just underdog either. If you want to drop, sorry, let me get that situated. If you want to drop anything into DraftKings or Drafters, FFPC, FanDuel, whatever, feel free to drop those in. So I was going to pull up some of my teams. And what I was going to do is really quickly run through some of the kind of most notable names. So when I sent out kind of the tweet, I was thinking about kind of the hottest names now. And you probably saw that Christian McCaffrey is on the thumbnail. And I can't stop thinking about this. I should have said this in a different way. CMC has been top of mind kind of for the last week or so, where the 49ers trade for him and you just can't, like, I just can't envision a scenario in which he just like isn't an absolute smash. Then he goes in first game, pulls off the Triple Crown, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown, and a receiving touchdown in the same game. Absolutely dominates the Rams without Debo. So he loses Debo for a little bit, which is helpful for him. But honestly, I think he's going to crush even with Debo. Their offense is just truly insane. So I wanted to look at some Christian McCaffrey teams. I think I shared it. I have something like 7% Christian McCaffrey in Best Ball Mania. So you see here, I have 11 CMC teams. 27% of them are advancing. 45% of them are within 20 points of advancing. And of course, I have it sorted here by total points. So you'll see my highest scoring team here at the top. And it is, of course, a Trey Lance team. So that's just painful right off the top, right? Like, Christian McCaffrey is a guy who I think is going to be an absolute monster fantasy asset down the stretch here. I think with what some of these other running backs have been doing, his performance has been, his performance might feel a smidge muted because you have Jacobs, you have Eckler, Chubb's been great. You have the zero RB guys, Ramondre, Ken Walker, etc. But you see this team. I mean, imagine if this team could have swapped out a quarterback, but we have the robust 2-4-9-3 robust running back team. CMC, Nick Chubb, Saquon Barkley with Chris Evans. I really don't even know why I tacked on Chris Evans, but then loses Mike Williams. So we're down Trey Lance and Mike Williams. Brandon Ayuk kind of luck boxed into CMC and Brandon Ayuk both benefiting from Debo. Well, we got Gabe basically Gabe, Drake, London, Ayuk, Kenny Galladay, useless. Sterling Shepard, useless. McCole, Josh Palmer, maybe back, hopefully back this week. So, with Lance and some of these stacked up injuries, it's not, this team is not looking great, but you can see, so it's up by 46 points right now. It's actually in second, not in first. It's up by 46 points right now. Unless Daniel Jones, has the greatest playoff run ever, probably not live to do much damage. Maybe if he has a good week 15. But those are always the tilting ones to go through. I'm going to run through a couple of these, Andrew, and then I'll pull your team up. And Gerardo says, is it just me or is scoring really bunched up right now? I'm not advancing in many, but within striking distance in most of my BBMs. Yeah, I think it's a good question. I think that the sheer amount of injuries and then the fact that there's kind of been great performances from all over the board. So we spent a lot of time talking about Josh Jacobs. We're now looking at Christian McCaffrey, who was the 101, 102. Ramondre Stevenson, Ken Walker. Enos had big games. Jamal Williams has probably been one of the most valuable picks in fantasy, with Swift banged up and really him just, even when Swift has been healthy, Jamal being useful via the touchdown. You sprinkle in some Taysom late in drafts. It hasn't been yet like last year where Derrick Henry is just lapping the field for half the season, or Cooper Kupp is just lapping the field. You know what I mean? The scoring across the board, really the only people like kind of lapping the field would be like a Josh Allen. And even then it's a quarterback. So like the Josh Allen teams are gaining points at quarterback most weeks on the field, but not so much like when you gain points from a 40-point Taysom week, that's like massive. You gain 5 or 10 points at quarterback. It's nice, but it's not, in terms of separation, it's not going to separate you. And so I feel kind of the same way. Last year at this time, I felt like we might start to do this exercise that I'm doing here. And I would have like a lot of teams that I was like, done, absolutely, completely stone cold dead, that were sitting in 11th or whatever and just had no chance. We may go through some of these, maybe even some of these CMC teams. Like my highest scoring CMC team that we just went through, I don't believe is live because it only has Daniel Jones at quarterback. Everything else is pretty much fine, but it only has Daniel Jones at quarterback. And frankly, only like 6 wide receivers right now. One of them's David Bell. So it's a killer team basically because of CMC, Chubb, and Saquon being on it with a few useful wide receivers. But like in terms of win equity in a tournament, that's the kind of stuff I want to dive into. Like people will be like, oh, what's your advance rate? Well, like this team we just reviewed is helping my advance rate. It's also helping my advance rate on like CMC teams, which I'm really excited. Like I would love to get as many CMC teams through as possible. This team is helping that. Both of those metrics, if I were to try to judge my teams by those metrics, this team is helping both of those metrics. However, it's not really helping my win equity in the tournament, in my opinion, unless we get a Daniel. So people will argue, oh, I just want to get as many bullets through. This team might get through, but like, okay, I might get whatever, $40 back, right? 40's the min cash, which is good. That's good. But it's not helping my chances of winning $2 million, in my opinion. See if we can find a different team that is maybe helping that chance. This one's interesting. Clearly, the CMC robust teams are doing well. Drafted out of the 3rd slot. It is up by 20. It is in first and up by 26 points. Lamar and Mariota at quarterback. CMC, Aaron Jones, and Lenny at running back with Jerry, Judy, Devonta Smith, Drake London, MVS, Chris Old. Okay, so this team's a little more fun. CMC, I would prefer, CMC, Aaron Jones, Lenny is much worse than CMC, Chubb, Saquon. No question. But it's still decent. And Judy, Devonta Smith, London, MVS, Olave, Wilson, Josh Palmer, Isaiah McKenzie, Alec Pierce, and the old James Prochet stack with Lamar. Awful tight ends, but Alberto, Tyler Higbee, and Noah Fant at tight end. So tight end's hurting, but pray to God Alberto gets traded and that team. So that team, right? So that team is like actually alive. Even though it has scored less points than this team. It's winning by less, et cetera, et cetera. Next one is a Javonte team, so we won't go through that. The next one after that is a Rashad Penny team, which I guess isn't technically dead, but CMC, Devin Singletary, Michael Carter, and Zamir White at running back is probably a little bit thin, especially then we have Elijah Moore goose eggs mixed in here, Kyle Pitts and Alberto. Another Penny team. Just trying to see here. So here's a little bit, right? So here's a kind of similar version. Aaron Jones over Saquon. 3 RB, CMC, Nick Chubb, and Aaron Jones. Get a Kyler, probably like Trey McBride. Yeah. Oh, God, look at the tight ends. See, so this team is kind of interesting, but a bunch of landmines. Alberto, Kmet, and McBride, all useless. Jalen Tolbert, useless. Kenny Galladay, useless. Everything else is okay. So, again, this team live to advance. Not so certain that this team is live to win. I'm going to pull up Andrew's team, which he just posted in the Discord. Let's take a look, see what we got here. Zoom in. See, hopefully you guys can see this. I'll scroll down to get to the tight ends. Again, he mentioned there was a CMC team, an anchor CMC team with Mahomes and Burrow. That's interesting. Mahomes stacked with Juju. Burrow stacked with T. With Mike Evans. Nuke. Very nice. Surrounding because CMC was fine to start the year, but not great. And so to be able to and Mike Evans, like fine, not great. T's had a couple of good games, but just to be able to, and then you missed 6 weeks from DeAndre Hopkins. But think about how perfect the surrounding pieces are on these guys to be able to get this kind of this odd collection of players, right? You wouldn't pull up and say, man, this is my best team. I'm not saying this is your best team, but you wouldn't think to pull up and say, man, this is my best team. It doesn't have, I'm trying to scroll a smidge here. 1 second. It doesn't have Pat Freiermuth and Hunter Henry at tight end, right? It doesn't have Mark Andrews. It doesn't have Josh Jacobs. It doesn't have Ken Walker. It doesn't even have Taysom. It doesn't have a lot of these guys that have been really hugely beneficial. It doesn't have Pollard from this past week getting a 30 spot. It doesn't have really any of the wide receiver. These wide receivers are really good. And isn't it so interesting though how they'll mesh together, right? There's been a big Evans game and then some decent Evans performances. There's been a big T game and some decent T performances. One big Juju game, right? Nuke has been awesome since he got back, but you were able to get, right, the Pickens, Wilson, even Zay helping you out. He's got 35 points for you on the season. You get the Jamal Williams smash, Ramondre smash alongside CMC. So combined with 2 of the highest upside quarterbacks when you get to the playoffs, this is fun. And I like Freiermuth. Hunter Henry has obviously been really shitty, but I really like Freiermuth, having, which I don't have much of. I don't have much of Pat Freiermuth either. I'm not sure how I'm going to survive. We're going to figure this out over the course of the next few weeks as we run through my teams. And you're you don't have any Eckler. You don't have any Josh Jacobs. You don't have any, of all the best picks. How are you going to make money? And my answer is I really don't fucking know on Underdog. That is for sure. Get lucky. Pray. I'm going to pray for 2 months. But Freiermuth is a tight end I think you should be excited about. I know you're a Steelers fan, so you know better than anyone. But is he like the upside play of Kelsey and Andrews? Of course not. But I think from a role and target volume perspective, I keep pulling up my teams and it's like Higbee and Fant and like these crappy these like truly Higbee is I guess similar to Pat Freiermuth, but I think there's a little more juice in the Pat Freiermuth teams. So this team is really fun and an awesome example of like, again, we spend all our time talking and we're because we're doing it high level because we're not really digging into specific teams, how players mesh together or whatever, right? And when you start to dig in and you say, yeah, you have to, like, obviously Ramondre has been awesome and Jamal Williams has been awesome, but you're like, well, you missed Nuke for 6 weeks. Your tight ends are incredibly average. You have 2 elite quarterbacks, so you're kind of theoretically losing some juice maybe at wide receiver, especially when you have Nuke, but it's a perfect mix of everything. The young players like Pickens and Wilson. Zay is just the perfect like late round guy on a team like with Hopkins, right? You're just like, please God, Zay, give me a few usable weeks while Hopkins is out, which is exactly what happened. And then you just hit the nuts at running back around CMC with Ramondre and Jamal and maybe Hunt. Hunt could be that guy. And frankly, Zamir has contingent value from Jacobs. Really good example of a team, like the kind of the point. I'm excited you brought that one up because like literally kind of the point of this whole show was like we talk so much throughout the course of the best ball season. You're like, oh crap. Like I said, I have 1% Austin Eckler. Uh-oh. But like, then you pull up your best teams and you're like, oh baby. Okay, let's look at this. Chase Claypool traded to the Bears. Is that what we're saying? So Brandon Silas also said Brandon Cooks not spotted at practice today. This is pretty sick. Let's find out. Let's look at Chase Claypool. I want to look. Let's see if we got any Claypool Fields teams. Again, we'll keep it to Best Ball Mania. I didn't draft a ton of Claypool either. But you have to be excited about Claypool. Let's look. Oh, this will be an interesting example. So I have 6 total. Interestingly, 6 total Claypool teams, and 2 of them are advancing. 3 of them are within 20 points of advancing. So I don't even need to filter for Fields. We can look really quick. Of course, Claypool was my Pickett stack partner on that team. No. Now I got it. But now I got to know if I have Claypool and and Fields on DraftKings. But like trade deadline day is such a good day to kind of think about these because it's like some of these guys. I want to look at Kadarius Toney after this as well because some of these guys who oh come on, big bucks. Oh, look at that. 7 now they're not very good. One advancing. But we found some Justin Fields, Chase Claypool teams in the DraftKings Millie. We got one that's advancing. Swift, son of a bitch. But look at that, Ken Walker. So we got a Kyler, Fields, Lawrence, Swift, Kamara, Ken Walker. Running backs are really bad if Swift doesn't get it together. Diggs, Gabe, Mooney. You got the old Justin Fields double stack now. Mooney, Claypool, to Hawk. You even got Hawk on the Vikings now. Hawk on the Vikings. This team's not bad if Swift can figure it out. This is a good point by Quan on Andrew's team. Or he had Evans, but same kind of idea. Not that Evans is hurt, but I like this where Mike Williams was good and really useful for you most of the time. A couple big games, couple not so big games, but you got like you if you mesh them together, you could find a way to get Hopkins has got to be he can't be like a crazy high advance rate player. He missed 6 weeks, could miss more, who knows. And then Mike Williams now going to be out for whatever, 4 to 6 weeks. We don't really know how long. I'm just speculating. Could be out for multiple weeks. But like if you mesh them together, you get a month and a half of good Mike Williams games. Then you get a month and a half of Hopkins games. And then when the playoffs come together, you get them both together at low ownership. That would be pretty sweet. This is a good one too. Pickens. If you got Pickens teams, that is very nice. See, I know Rob's not excited for the Claypool thing. I don't know, man. I'm not saying you should necessarily be excited. Like he's obviously not gonna be some super, they don't throw enough for him to get 20 targets or whatever. But I think it's interesting because they're starving for somebody. And I don't think Claypool's certainly not a star. He has flaws. He has issues as a football player. He plays way too small for how big he is. That's mainly it. That's mainly the thing. He plays way too small for 6'4", 240 or whatever. But he's a freak athlete, clearly capable of making big plays, and he's absolutely better than Dante Pettis and Equinemius St. Brown and Valus. He's better than those guys. So you get Claypool alongside Mooney, and they're moving the ball right now. The Bears are moving the ball. They're finally running Fields a little bit. And now that doesn't mean there's going to be a lot of passing, but just if you can eke any efficiency out of the offense, now you add another weapon. I don't know. I would be pretty excited. I'm going to look at Fields teams really quickly too, and then we can hit a couple. Carlos will hit your question, and let's see. 11 total Best Ball Mania 3 teams with Justin Fields. Not a lot advancing, not a lot close. not too surprising, but one being a Josh Allen Justin Fields team, which has Miles Sanders. We double tapped the Eagles running backs. Tony Pollard, Miles Sanders, Kenny Gainwell, Raheem Mostert. So not bad. The running backs could be better. You would prefer the Ramondres and Ken Walkers of the world. But Pollard, Miles, Mostert, sprinkle in maybe a little bit of Hilliard here or there with some guys who still have some contingent value. That's not bad. Allen, Diggs stack with Gabe, A.J. Brown, frickin' Bateman, Rashad Bateman, the Fields Mooney stack, Brevin Jordan and Mike Gesicki. Jesus Lord. That's terrible. So here's the second advancing team. This one's kind of interesting. A late round QB team, right? Fields, Goff, Mariota, Miles Sanders, Devin Singletary, Naheem Hines, who is supposed to be getting traded as well. If that happens, someone drop that in the chat because that would be sweet for this team. Hines, James Robinson also got traded. Zamir White, Jerick McKinnon, Boston Scott, Devontae Adams, T. Higgins, Gabe Davis. See, this one would be pretty interesting too in terms of like you would never a solo Travis. So we went with the old singular tight end. 0 RB, 3 late round quarterbacks, solo Kelsey. For the old 3-7-7-1 team. How many 3-7-7-1 teams you got there? But again, this team's ahead by 11 points, sitting in first place. But you would not guess. Like I just pulled this team up and I'm like, it's kind of fun. It's kind of a fun team to have. The running backs are not perfect. But, we would have said last year at this time, is Devin Singletary one of the running backs you want on your teams? You would have been like, no. And then Devin Singletary was one of the guys you needed down the stretch. Same for Rashad Penny. So just having kind of some life on some of these teams. If any of you have a Fields team or a Claypool team or a Pickens team or a Hawkinson team or anything like that, again, drop it into the Discord. I have it up here and I will be monitoring. Let's look we were looking at McCaffrey. I wanted to look at some. Oh, Toney, Kadarius Toney. Kadarius Toney is like, we talked about Claypool and like, I don't know how great this is for Claypool. Or just generally speaking, it's definitely not the best landing spot. You probably would have preferred Green Bay or something. But it's exciting because maybe he can kind of become the man here. Maybe he can actually make some big plays, which the Steelers have not been doing. So it's at least interesting to look at. And maybe you find yourself on some unique combinations of players. Kadarius Toney, however, maybe I'll be wrong, because betting on these types of players, really hot, really highly volatile. Really highly volatile. Who knows if Kadarius Toney is actually healthy? He's saying he is, and the Giants are just holding him back. I personally tend to believe that. Maybe it's wrong to believe Kadarius Toney, but I'm kind of tending to believe that. And even if it isn't the case, he just fits the Chiefs so perfect. And so he's another guy who we're sitting here halfway through the season, and you would be like, he was a disaster pick, right? He hasn't even played. It's worse than Nuke. He's not even doing anything. But now you look at that team, and if you have, so you see here in BBM, I have 12 Kadarius Toney teams. 3 of them are within 20 points of advancing. Interestingly enough, my third, so again, I have it sorted by points here. So it's kind of funny. Sometimes you'll see, right? I have 3 teams within 20 points of advancing, but my third highest scoring team is not one of them. It has scored 19 more points than a team that's closer to moving on. And it is oh my Lord, a Devin Singletary, Rojo, Michael Carter, Tyrion Davis Price. Oh God. I don't know how this team is doing well. Yeah, Felix spotted the Najee team. So we have one of my 2 advancing Kadarius Toney teams is Najee Harris. You want to talk about a lower owned kind of pairing there? Damian Pierce, Tony Pollard, Devin Singletary, Khalil Herbert picking up the slack for Najee. That's how you had to build your Najee teams. Pray to God your other running backs. You have to build Najee teams like 0 RB teams. Hollywood. I'm not. This team's gonna, unless Najee starts doing something, this team's gonna be difficult. Hollywood out. Gabe Amon-Ra. That's nice. With Tony, Garrett Wilson, Jahan Dotson, Nico, Zay. Oh, and Andrews and Hurst. That's not a bad team. That's not a bad team. But again, see, so it has Andrews, but you're like, I don't know. Is there anybody? This team is winning, is in first place in the league that it's in. Kyler, Zach Wilson, not exciting. Najee, stone cold bust. Pollard, good. Devin Singletary, meh. Damian Pierce, very good. Khalil Herbert, pretty good. Hassan Haskins, useless. Marquise Brown, hurt. Gabe, good every 4th game. Amon-Ra, pretty good, but has actually been kind of bad for fantasy for a while. The dang injuries are killing him. Kadarius Toney literally hasn't played. Garrett Wilson, pretty good. Jahan Dotson hasn't played in a month or whatever. Nico, hurt. Zay, redacted. Mark Andrews, pretty good. Hayden Hurst. So you run through that team and you're just like, it's okay, but it's winning. It's in first, and then it gets through. Let's say it's healthy. Let's just say it's healthy by the playoffs. It gets through. Probably has a pretty popular Mark Andrews. But like other than that, you got some juice with these, so looking at your Kadarius Toney teams, super interesting. Super interesting. Just going to scroll, see if there's anything else kind of notable from these teams, and you guys can make fun of my crappy teams. Here's I want to see if there's any useful run. Damn it. I was really hoping this team was not completely dead, Because here's something interesting, right? Toney gets traded to the Chiefs, and you land him on a Patrick Mahomes team. It also has CMC, who we just talked about being a smash. RB2 is going to need some good luck on Nyheim Hines' landing spot and maybe Michael Carter to do something. But you've at least got CMC covered. Rachaad White. Maybe Rachaad White can get a little bit more work. A.J. Brown, smash. Allen Robinson, yikes. Devonta Smith, Toney. Olave, sky. But again, if you have with Pitts, Hurst, and Austin Hooper. It's a fun thought experiment to go through some of these teams and think about the guys. Toney is an example, and CMC was an example. Maybe you think Claypool is. Pickens, definitely, which Andrew has freaking 73% of. I would be very excited for Pickens. Go through. I don't know if you can go through all your Pickens teams because it's all of them. Andrew would have to go through all of them to look at the Pickens teams. But maybe the rest of us, you're like, Pickens has been, he's not the total best example for this analogy because he's been okay. But not really anything special, and he really got steamed up boards. I have 9 total Pickens teams and only 1 is advancing. Oh my God, look at it. Javonte is on all my Pickens teams. And here's another funny example. My highest scoring Pickens team is in 5th. My second highest scoring Pickens team is advancing. And it's up by 28. This one's down by 58. But yeah, looks like Javonte killed my Pickens team. See if we got any. So here's, oh my God. How did we draft this team? Jalen Hurts, Carson Wentz. So let's go. We're just riding Hurts the rest of the way. JT, awful. Zeke, awful. But Ramondre, Rojo, Spiller, and Darrell Henderson. A.J. Brown, Judy, Drake London, Russell Gage, Isaiah McKenzie, Zay, Pickens, Curtis Samuel, and Pitts. So it's 55 points behind with a lot of guys who really haven't done shit. With JT being an example. So you have all these different teams sitting in these kind of funny spots now at the midway point that I think is an interesting time to, again, kind of review. And I figured I would pull up some of mine so you can see what bad teams look like. So Toney, CMC was an example of someone who's been bad, but he wasn't awesome. Someone who I think, right, there's that bucket of CMC, Toney, definitely Pickens, maybe Claypool. I don't know about maybe Hawk, right? But some guys, Hopkins, who I wasn't drafting, DeAndre Hopkins, guys who may not be who we're thinking of, like Josh Jacobs, like Ramondre, like Mark Andrews, may not be who we're thinking of, the guys where you're like, man, that dude's a smash. Austin Eckler. Those guys are going to be on all my best teams. Finding the guys who it's not just finding the guy, right? Everybody will say like, oh, he's underperformed. So JT is a good example. Oh, he's underperformed. So maybe you'll get him low owned in the finals or in the playoffs. It's like, that's all well and good. But the point is to have somebody who's low owned and projects well, right? Amon-Ra St. Brown, Rashad Penny, somebody who not only did you get there with that guy, but it wasn't like you got there and they were a bad projection and low owned. That doesn't really help you, right? If JT, and I'm not saying this will be the case, if you get JT to the playoffs, yes, sometimes variance happens and he can have a big game. But if you get him to the playoffs and he projects like the 15th best running back on the board, you're giving up so much projection. That uniqueness isn't really helping you offset the projection. You're just, at that point, you're just praying for the variance gods, as opposed to what you want is getting Kadarius Toney ends up as the wide receiver 1 on the Chiefs, and he's a top 10 wide receiver in fantasy. I know it's a reach. I'm just saying let's use that as an example. What you want is having a Kadarius Toney team where you reach the playoffs. No one else has him because he didn't do shit for 8 weeks, 9 weeks. You reach the playoffs with Kadarius Toney. He is both low owned and a high upside and high floor, whatever. His projection and his upside is huge. That's the edge. I know we try to make ourselves feel good by saying, well, maybe I can get Kyle Pitts to the playoffs on some teams and he'll be low owned. It's like maybe tight end isn't the best example because at least at tight end, everybody has a bad projection besides 2 guys. But like, we'll do it with, right? No offense, Felix. I'm sorry. Maybe I can get Najee. Maybe I can get Najee to the playoffs and no one else will have him, right, in my pod. Or no one will have him in the finals of Best Ball Mania. It's like, that seems like, oh yeah, that's great to have the low-owned player. And it kind of is. But if the low-owned player projects so much worse, it really doesn't matter. It really doesn't help you, right? It's like playing Najee in DFS. When there's playing Najee and no one played Najee on DraftKings. Not when there's right Foreman, Kamara, Pollard, Jacobs, CMC, Derrick Henry. He projected as like the 20th best running back on the entire slate. So just because you played him in DFS at 0.5% ownership doesn't matter because he has no chance to outscore everybody else. What you want is the 0.5% ownership with the Pollard upside. So those are the guys we need to find. Toney, Pickens, right? I think those are good examples of those guys. Yugs. We're going with Yugs. I'm currently 4th overall in BBM. Holy shit. And I'm starting to victory lap, very ready to be sad. What's the team? You can type it in the chat. You can post it in the Discord, whatever you want to do. I'm interested to see the team. Yugs. There are guys with J.K. Dobbins, who may fit that well. Misses 8 to 10 games and maybe a smash and low owned. Yeah, he could be a guy who we know the Ravens can run. Gus Edwards scored 2 touchdowns in his first game. So did Dobbins. Dobbins has a 2-touchdown game. Gus has a 2-touchdown game. Kenyon Drake has a big game. We know that the Ravens running backs can produce fantasy points. Dobbins needs to get there and have a role, right? We need to reach that point, and J.K. Dobbins actually has a freaking role. Let's try to look at a Dobbins team really quick. J.K. Dobbins. I drafted 10 J.K. Dobbins teams. 2 of them are advancing. 4 of them are within 20 points, so that's not too bad. Let's see. The best one, oh my gosh, they're actually kind of smashing. Up. One is up by 119. One is up by 105. 1,083 points. Jalen Hurts, Tua, Dobbins, Pollard, frickin' Penny, Spiller, Dontrell Hilliard. How the hell does this have that many points at running back? I don't know how this team is doing anything, frankly. Stephon Diggs, Mike Williams, that hurts. Jalen Waddle, Devonta Smith, Jalen Tolbert, yuck. Jacoby Myers, Zay Jones, Corey Davis, Jamison Crowder. Again, another, just the benefits of I don't think this team is particularly live to win BBM, but the benefits of a solo Kelsey team. Here's one. Here's one of my Josh Jacobs teams. It has J.K. Dobbins. Now, the quarterback play is not great, but isn't it funny that a Matthew Stafford, Marcus Mariota team is in first by 106 points with Dobbins, who's only had one good game, but Josh Jacobs, CPAT about to come back, Mostert, and then some useless running backs. But Stafford to Cooper Kupp, A.J. Brown, T. Higgins, Jalen Waddle, Rashad Bateman could be another interesting playoff guy. Brandon Ayuk, MVS, David Njoku, Tyler Higbee, Brevin Jordan. Lose David Njoku. This team's going to have to fight off the old injuries. All right, let me find Hugh's team real quick in the Discord. We can review what an actual good team looks like as opposed to my shitty teams that we keep looking at. Let me zoom in. I'll zoom in just a smidge more here. Okay. I really hate this damn. One second, guys. Sorry. My fault. Okay. So, Lamar and Tua, phenomenal. Almost as good as you can get at the quarterback position. Wait, this is the team that's in fourth place and it has Dobbins? Holy hell, look at those running backs. Okay. This is a fourth place team in Best Ball Mania 3. Lamar and Tua with J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, and Michael Carter. Wow. Those running backs are unreal on a zero running back team. J.K. Dobbins, Ramondre Stevenson, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, and Michael Carter. Perfect example of like just a really well-built team. Hats off to you. B, when we were talking about like the Najee thing, these guys are why getting low-owned Najee, right, to the playoffs is not that impactful because he's not going to project better than like all else equal, right? Fast forward 2 months and assume everything is going according to plan. Najee's not even going to project better than these guys. Nonetheless, McCaffrey, Derrick Henry, Austin Eckler, right? And so the power of leverage is in, like you said, it's kind of in structure as well, right? You have a team that honestly doesn't really need J.K. Dobbins, but it would be nice to have that extra bullet to find a 2-touchdown performance when you get into the playoffs. And I mean, you're obviously trying to win the million, the regular season prize. And I certainly would say that you're live with Ramondre, Josh Jacobs, Antonio Gibson, and Michael Carter. The Michael Carter, we need Michael Carter. I need Michael Carter right there with you. So you'll be the one winning $1 million. I'll just be advancing a couple more teams. But I'm right there with Michael Carter is like probably one of my more important players the rest of the way. So we need the Jets. We need the Jets. And of course they get the Bills this week. So that's probably not going to be good. At wide receiver, Justin Jefferson. Oh my God. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, George Pickens, Garrett Wilson, Paris Campbell, Bryan Edwards. Had to just throw Bryan Edwards on there to throw us off the scent because those wide receivers are disgusting. Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, A.J. Brown, Jalen Waddle, mixed in with probably the 2 highest upside rookies now, Olave, these 2 and Olave, George Pickens and Garrett Wilson. Paris Campbell has even came in big for you a little bit. And then Pat Freiermuth, Taysom Hill. Oh my God. Pat Freiermuth, Taysom Hill, and Greg Dulcich. I mean, if J.K. Dobbins were healthy, I don't know what the top 3 teams look like in BBM, but I find it difficult to say if J.K. Dobbins were healthy, you would not be the favorite. I find it very tough to say that. I know that those teams are obviously going to be awesome too. And I have seen the first place team, but the first place team is a 3-6-7-3 team that's honestly kind of thin. That the scores have come together really well. I think from a weekly and rest of season upside and projection stance, this team is right there. Needs, the running backs are awesome, but it does still need, when you only have 4 of them, you still need a little bit of run good. You know what I mean? Like you need the weeks to come together right. And you need not to have anybody, when guys are on buys, you're going to need people to step up and have big games. However, you got a darn good stable of guys to do it. And I mean, the wide receivers, good Lord. That is truly insane. this makes so much sense that all the top teams are Allen stacked. So there's a good example when we were talking about advance rates. Josh Allen is going to be, even for a quarterback going in the third round, is going to be probably a pretty high advance rate player. All the highest scoring teams have him. So naturally, if all the highest scoring teams have him, a lot more teams with him are going to advance, especially because they're stacking him with Diggs, Gabe, other guys having big years. All right, let's look at Jake's team really quick, and then we can get out of here. Jalen Hurts. So this team is down 23 total points to Yuge's team. So it's, in the hunt with Hurts. I guess Hurts and Josh Allen got to be the two of the quarterbacks, carrying a lot of so that's why you having Lamar and Tua is pretty sick. Hurts Fields, that's interesting. Saquon, having Damian Harris is interesting. I know he's kind of losing his job, but those things can change. Ramondre could get dinged up. They could go to more Harris. Things change. Saquon, Damian Harris, Alexander Madison, who's also in some trade rumors. I imagine they're not going to trade him now. They seem to be, going for it. But the contingent value, pretty fun on Alexander Madison. How the hell Mark Ingram hurt? That sucks. Tyrion Davis-Price. How are you scoring so many points? This team has 1,187 points with Tyrion Davis-Price, Mark Ingram, Keontae Ingram. How is that even possible? I mean, I know Saquon is a monster, but your wide receivers, we haven't got to it yet, but these wide receivers, I know Hurts is a smash. Kittle, and it's Kittle and Hurst. This is very confusing to me, but also why I'm interested in doing this every week. So you guys can share with me these teams where I can't figure out how it has 1,188 points. The running backs besides Saquon suck. Madison's done a little bit, right? Ingram had a week or something. Mark Ingram, not Silas's boy, Keontae. Justin Jefferson, obviously smash. A.J. Brown, obviously smash. Marquise Brown was great before he went down. Devonta Smith has had 2 big weeks, maybe 3 or 4 usable weeks. So that's nice. Now you got Claypool, who also had one really good game that I'm sure you used. Jarvis Landry hurt. Rondale had a good game last week. Nico hurt. Valus useless. KJ Hamler useless. How does this team have so many points? But again, what a perfect team where it's like you're absolutely destroying, and how many of these guys are going to show up in playoff pods? Like maybe by sheer luck, someone like Alexander Madison will or something. But like Claypool, Landry, Valus, Rondale, Kittle, no. Kittle's only had 2 decent games, and they were good, but they weren't like he didn't pull a Taysom. So like super, super interesting. Super, super interesting. Yeah, that's true. Oh, it's DK. It's DK. No, totally fine, Jake. But still, that's still crushing. Absolutely crushing on DK. And it's the same story. Most of those guys are not going to be super popular on DK in the playoff rounds. So thanks for hanging out. First show of this. We'll continue every single week. This was the first one, so we had like a whole lot to cover, and it's trade deadline day, so we get Claypool news in the middle of the show. We got Hawkinson news earlier. CMC traded last week. Kadarius Toney traded last week, so there was a whole lot of different stuff to hit on. Moving forward, we'll talk about what happened this week. Start to do some of the experiments that we did with looking at Toney, looking at Pickens, but it'll be different week to week, right? If Josh Jacobs has another down game, I don't even know I don't know if they're playing or who they're playing. If Josh Jacobs has another down game, I think they play the Jags. If Josh Jacobs has another down game, what do we think? 5 days ago, we thought Josh Jacobs was the smash of all smashes. If we come next week at this time, how are we going to be projecting Josh Jacobs moving forward? How are we going to be projecting Christian McCaffrey? How are we going to be projecting George Pickens, Chase Claypool, all these guys, Kadarius Toney, to where we'll continue to like build upon this? Maybe some weeks will show up and it'll be really bad. the things that happen, you know, sorry to Derrick Henry drafters. Derrick Henry has another 200-yard multi-touchdown game, and we'll be wondering if the big dog's coming back to haunt us from last season, us getting lucky when he got hurt. But we'll kind of go week by week, review the best ball landscape, review some of the hot names, hot topics, and eventually get close to the playoffs or get into the playoffs and probably look back at a lot of this. Like, why the fuck are we talking about Chase Claypool on the Bears? Cheers, Andrew. Thank you. Awesome team. Awesome team. To Jake, thank you for joining us. Yugs, I wish all of you good luck, but Yugs, we'll be rooting for your team. Come back next week. We'll pull it up again, see where you stand. I'm excited. I'll be rooting for your team and all you guys' teams, but mostly my own teams. And we'll see you guys